In this video, I'll be sharing with you how you can study harmony. Before I give my tips and advice, I would just like to preface and say that many people feel very strongly about this and they will have their own version of reality. I'm sharing what I have learned, what I have found to be very effective, but take it with a grain of salt. So I've been composing since 2003, 4, but at a certain point, I had a teacher who saw that my technique was holding me back from realizing future larger goals. Okay, in particular in counterpoint and harmony. And I was able to find a good harmony teacher, a counterpoint teacher, but harmony, I really struggled in America. And so ultimately I had to move to Paris, France to get my real training. Now, there are some good harmony teachers in America, but it can be very hard to find them if you're not in a big city. So I want to just share with you what I think makes for good study of harmony. In France, they have two main harmony kind of workbooks, okay? And you work through them through at least several years, maybe 8 years, 5 years, 3 years usually minimum, okay? And you work and you work and you work and you work. And by the end, you have a really good level in harmony. I have to say the composers in France, I do have some criticisms, but it's not about harmony. However, in America, I find there are a lot of composers who are they have the arrogance to think they know harmony and they really don't. And just find composers that can talk about Bach and, vomit this, these things. Oh, Bach is very convinced that they know the truth, but they just don't have a good level in harmony. Okay, they don't really understand harmony. Okay, that does not mean that they're not good composers, but I think at a certain point, if you don't have a good level in harmony, it may prevent you from finding the most expansive possibilities. Okay, so in France, they have Henri Chalon. Okay, he has a series of workbooks like this. And the beauty of how you study harmony in France is you have les bastonnets and les chantonnets. So what that means is when you first start, for example, in book 1, they give you a bass. And then you have to realize the other 3 voices, soprano, alto, tenor. And then once you finish that, you do the reverse. So they have chandonnet. In the Henri Chalon, they use the soprano clef, which is kind of nice. But they give you basically it's a melody, okay? It's the top voice, and you have to realize the other 3 voices, the bass, the tenor, and the alto, though, of course, you're going to be hearing a lot with the bass, okay? And the first book in the Henri Chalon is just 3-note chords, okay? He starts with root position, okay? And you have the bass and you realize the other voices, and you have the soprano and you realize the other voices. Then you get to first inversion, so you keep the root position, add the first inversion, and then it ends with the second inversion, so you have all 3 chords mixed together in exercise. It's not composition. It will not feel creative. It's not supposed to feel creative, but it will give you training, and you'll do these exercises every day or every week with your professor. You'll do them at home. Your professor will come to the lesson and will correct them. And it is just, I cannot tell you how much I grew from doing Henri Chalon. The book 2 is modulation et marche harmonique, so it's modulations, okay, key changes, and sequences, okay? So do you see how it's graduated like that? And then book 3 is the dominant sevenths, okay? So we start first with the conventional use of the dominant sevenths, and then we add, unconventional uses, okay? And there are plenty more books, but those were the first 3 were the ones that my master teacher, Narcisse Bonnet, who was a disciple of Nathalie Boulanger, he thought were most important. And I have to say, independent of him, I agree, because that's kind of the bread and butter. And I have to say, after 1 year with Narcisse Bonnet and studying these, finishing these first 3 books, I was ready for orchestration in France. And if you know anything about orchestration in France, you have to have a really good level. You really have to know harmony. The hardest thing about orchestration is just knowing harmony. That seriously. So In my particular case, I was able to put a lot of time into it. I was able to put 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week, because I had moved to France. Like, I got to do this. So I was able to advance very quickly. I also studied in a certain manner to be very efficient. I think for most people, it would take about 3 years to finish it if you're just doing 3 to 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week at most on the exercises, and you have a teacher. Of course, it is hard to find a teacher that uses Shannon in America because takes a long time to get the stuff from France. But there are some teachers, and if you really want to understand harmony and actually creating it, then that's the way to go. Like I said, a lot of composers think they know harmony because they can analyze and they can talk, and that's not harmony. Okay, you have to build it day by day, and they correct, and then you improve the corrections, and you really learn hands-on. Okay, but something to note: it is not composition. It does not replace composition. You still have to compose elsewhere. I suggest that you forget about harmony when you're composing. When you're composing, just compose. Do not try to integrate what you're learning in your harmony classes because it'll make your music bad. It'll be safe. Your music won't be interesting. It's just something to give you really, really good training. Now, something else that's important is having some kind of reference guide, okay? Because just your teacher coming and correcting that, you want to take notes, but some teachers, it's just not... The notes might just be the corrections. You don't have time to write everything down. You need to have some kind of reference guide. And so there are multiple traités de l'harmonie in France. I mean, it's like kind of treaties on harmony, and they give you all the rules. Mine preferred is Bernot. Unfortunately, Bernot has not been published, and it's in French. Okay. And so it was passed down through my teacher who had studied, not Narcisse Benet, but a different teacher who had studied with Bernot. Bernot was at the Paris Conservatory, but it doesn't matter where he was. But this treaty on harmony is just the simplest, clearest that you can possibly find. It just makes it so clear and simple. There's no fluff. There's no arrogance. It's just direct, and the examples illustrate it immediately. You read the rule, you see the example, it's clear as day. Okay, so if I was teaching at the moment at harmony, I would definitely use the Bernot, though it's a little bit cumbersome when it's in French. I'd have to translate for the students, but I don't mind doing that. Some of the other books they use in France are Dubois, okay, which is the older one that was standard in France. There's many different ones, okay, and honestly, the French are really good at harmony, so I think it's more the system they have in place of constantly composing, doing these harmonic exercises with the bass, realizing the top voice is the soprano. I think that's where the training is. Because, of course, with harmony, what we learn is to hear the opposition of the top versus the bottom. And I find, especially with fugue, you're always doing that, right? I'm getting the melody, I'm hearing the bass. Or you have the bass, you got to hear the melody. So this polarity is part of the thinking in the French. If you don't have... It's unlikely that you would get access to the Bernot. I understand it. Plus, it's in French. But I think you do need some kind of reference guide. Because when I switched harmony teachers, because my main teacher passed away, unfortunately, I think I switched, or rather I got a different counterpoint teacher. He asked, well, what is your reference guide? You need to have some kind of reference, like this is like referring back to. And I think he's right. So there is a danger sometimes when you have a teacher and it's just their aesthetic or their personal opinion. I'm sure they're good, but it's hard for you as a student to improve if you are dependent on that teacher and you can't go back later and review. So I urge you to find some kind of harmony guide that's been translated into English, or ideally to learn French.